On today's Newsmakers, a Finnish lawmaker prosecuted for her faith. Do aliens really exist? And our conversation with singer Phil Wickham. Welcome to Newsmakers, a show where we go behind the headlines every week to bring you interviews with pastors, entertainers, politicians, and other notable figures. On today's Newsmakers, we'll start with a politician on trial for sharing her biblical views on sexuality. Dr. Päivi Räsänen is a member of Finnish parliament, and she found herself in court and facing potential prison time after she tweeted a Bible verse. Räsänen joins us to explain why she believes her case is absurd and akin to medieval times. Now, your second trial just recently concluded. You're waiting for the results of that trial. And before we get into what happened in the courtroom, I want to get your reaction to the experience of what that was like to go through. Can you tell us, for those who don't know, a little bit about what you're being accused of?
Okay. The whole process started over 4 years ago when I posted a Twitter post about it was criticism against my church, who had decided to support the Pride event. And I took a photo from the Bible and I added it to the Twitter update where I questioned the leadership of my church, that how is this compatible with the teaching of the church, that you are celebrating as pride something which Bible calls sin and shame. After that, police started to investigate the Twitter update, and when it came to public, there became more criminal complaints about an old pamphlet that I had written already 20 years ago, and then there was a radio program. And in fact, I was interrogated over 13 hours by police, which was a very absurd situation because I had just before been the Minister of Interior in charge of the police. But then the police didn't find any crime in my pamphlet and radio program, but the prosecutor general ordered the police to continue the investigation. And then the prosecutor filed up charges against me. Last year, I had the Helsinki District Court trial about these charges, and now and then I was acquitted from all these charges by an unanimous verdict, but the prosecutor decided to appeal to the appellate court. And now we had the second round of trials 2 days last week.
As you hear you describe it and talk about it, I mean, the government's role should never be, this is what in America, why we have, and I know you have constitutional protections there as well, but we have the First Amendment. And the reason we have it is to prevent this exact sort of thing, the government coming in and making a determination about faith and what people should believe. You know, from what I read in the courtroom, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, the prosecutor was saying, well, the authors of the Bible are not on trial here. But it sounds like the authors of the Bible are on trial and they're trying to just pretend it's you that's the problem.
Yes. Yes. In fact, it is about the Bible and how the prosecutor said in the trial that Päivi Räsänen is allowed to believe in her mind whatever about the Bible, but it is illegal to express it outwardly. So it is about the Bible. In fact, in Finland, our secular media has called this Bible trial or Bible under trial. So
Yeah.
In Finland, we have freedom of speech and freedom of faith, freedom of religion in our constitution.
Final question for you. I know we're waiting for a result, and we should get that result by, at the latest, the end of November. How can people be praying for you and your family during this time?
Oh, I'm so thankful for all prayers, and I think that it makes me humble when I hear that people whom I have never met tell that they are praying for me, and I myself, I pray that this time when this this is also the case is also in Finnish media, I pray that this would wake up Christians to be courageous, to be open about the faith, and it would also encourage people to read the Bible and so I pray for awakening of our society. So I think that it is the most important prayer request for Finland.
Well, we need awakening everywhere, Finland and around the world. I appreciate your time today for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Razanin's case no doubt leaves us with a lot to ponder, especially when it comes to hostile acts of government persecution. But we also have to wonder whether we'll see similar things unfold here in America. Much of that, of course, depends on Americans' willingness to defend our constitutional rights. We'll be right back in just a moment with more Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. Now, I want to shift gears to a very different subject. Aliens. Are they real? Do UFOs truly exist? These were questions that were once relegated to the confines of conspiracy, but yet they're now being entertained by scientists, academics, and even in the halls of Congress. We sit down with Dr. Hugh Ross, an astrophysicist and apologist, to get his take on what might really be going on. Dr. Ross, you are an expert in a variety of areas. You're an astrophysicist, you're an apologist, and you're one of the best people to go to on this topic of UFOs and aliens and extraterrestrials. This is a subject that for a long time, I think, was seen as fringe or was sort of not discussed maybe in the mainstream. And suddenly here we are. It's a topic we're seeing in Congress. We're seeing testimony in Congress. We're seeing all sorts of government documentation on this, and stories that previously, again, were sort of concealed coming out into the open. What do you make of sort of this newfound cultural, resurgence and interest in this topic?
Well, I became a UFO expert, but not on purpose. I was an amateur astronomer before I became a professional astronomer. So every university where I served, they said, you have to handle all the UFO reports. And about 99% of what people would report to me as UFOs, I could explain as natural phenomena, a hoax, or secret government military activity. But there's a 1% residual that falls in a different category. And these would be UFO phenomena that observers report violating the laws of physics. On the other hand, they leave evidence indicating that they're real phenomena. And that, I think, explains why you have a lot of scientists and skeptics saying this doesn't exist, because they come from a worldview that doesn't permit the existence of non-physical reality. But as a Christian, as a believer in the inerrancy of the Bible, I do believe in the existence of non-physical reality, because the Bible tells us God created two different species of intelligent life, one that's constrained by the physics of the universe and one that is not. And we're talking about humans that are indeed constrained by the dimensions and laws of physics of the universe, and angels who are not. And these angels live in a different dimensional realm, but God has given them the power to come in temporarily into our realm. So I think that's where that 1% residual falls. And some of the strongest evidence for that is that where you got multiple observers tracking a UFO going through the atmosphere, which means we can actually calculate its trajectory and velocity. and the velocities often run between 5 and 25,000 miles per hour. But the observers never record the occurrence of a sonic boom or a heat friction trail behind the UFO. If it was a physical object, you would get a sonic boom. You would get a heat friction trail, just like you do when one of the spaceships go through our atmosphere from the International Space Station. However, there are a couple of thousand cases documented where the UFO not only goes through our atmosphere, it crashes into the Earth. And when you go to the crash site, you see a crater. If there's snow, the snow is melted. The vegetation is consistently damaged. But as you investigate that crater site, there's never any debris. There's no artifacts. If it was a physical craft crashing into the Earth, you'd be able to recover some debris and artifacts. But the fact that you see a crater and melted snow and damaged vegetation means that something real caused that. So we're dealing with non-physical reality, or what the French astrophysicist Jacques Vallée referred to. He says, we're dealing with interdimensional phenomena. I mean, he's not a believer, but that was his conclusion. We're dealing with a phenomena that's operating in dimensions different than those of the universe.
Of course, I have to ask you about David Grush and the, testimony. He's obviously an intelligence officer, served for 14 years in a variety of capacities. His testimony, congressional testimony, garnered a lot of attention. What was that like for you to watch, and what were some of your takeaways on that?
I wound up doing a podcast on why his claims should not be believed. They're not credible. I mean, I can give you 3 quick reasons. Number one, U.S. government security is not up to the task. 6 decades of cover-up of something that fits in multiple hangars, where you got 20, 30, 50-foot pieces of artifacts. I mean, you're young, but I can remember when Richard Nixon, as a U.S. president, tried to cover up a single audio cassette tape. And he was only successful in doing that with all the power of the executive branch behind him. He could only cover up a cassette tape for 11 days. So are we to believe that the government actually has these hangars filled with physical craft, with biological tissue inside of them that nobody's been able to come out? And I say, number 2, where are the artifacts? I mean, I've been to different museums where I've been able to see up close multiple rocks recovered from the Apollo astronauts, real artifacts that I can see that are on display in a museum where people pick them up and handle them with special gloves, of course. But there's nothing like that with the UFO phenomena. Nothing that you can tangibly see and touch that's in a museum that's never come out. And the third reason is, I think, the most compelling. It's simply not possible for a physical craft to travel through interstellar space, at least not a craft of significant small size. I mean, for example, astronomers are interested in sending spaceships to the nearest planet outside of our solar system. It's only 4.2 light years away. But they realize as these spaceships travel through space, they'll encounter electrons, protons, helium nuclei, tiny pieces of dust. And this will destroy the craft, and the greater the size of the craft, the greater the destruction. So they've come up with a plan to say, we're going to send tiny spaceships, and we're going to send a whole bunch of them. So the proposal is to send 1,000 spaceships, no bigger than 10 centimeters across, to the nearest planet outside our solar system, with the understanding that at least half of them will be totally destroyed. The other half will only be partly destroyed, but destroyed in different ways. And so the hope is we'll get some information back. But there's no way you're going to send a termite across interstellar space, or even a microbe, let alone something the size of a human being. In fact, I've written articles making the point, if you want to send an animal, a physical animal, roughly the size of a human being, across interstellar space, number one, you're looking at thousands of years to make the trip. That's a long time, way beyond the lifetime of a human being. And you're going to need a spaceship at least the size of the Death Star. because you need the spaceship to be big enough that you can protect the inhabitants from deadly interstellar radiation. And you also need to be able to provide them with artificial gravity and enough sustenance that they can survive trips that are going to last thousands of years. And so at a minimum, you're going to need a spaceship that's 1,000 kilometers across. And if you really want to be safe about doing it, you're going to need something about the size of our moon. And so the idea that these things in hangars in different places, no, it's way too small to bring beings across interstellar space.
I so appreciate your time and your knowledge. Thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Dr. Ross certainly leaves us with a thought-provoking spiritual take on a complex matter. It's one worth considering, especially as our secular culture continues to navigate this issue. We'll be back in just a moment with more Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. Now, on a very different and a much lighter note, our final interview today features a wide-ranging conversation with one of America's most well-known Christian singers, Phil Wickham. We talk about his life, career, and new music. Let's welcome him to Newsmakers. So, Phil, you've got a new album out, I believe, and you've been making music for a long time now. What has you most excited about this album?
Me and the same stuff that always gets me excited, which a few months after I release an album, I'm always scared that I won't get excited about the next one. I'm like, is this the last one? I'll feel this way. But every time I release a record, I just trying to be faithful to the calling to write songs, some songs for the church to sing, some new prayers, write songs that light my heart up, just ancient truths, new ways to sing ancient truths about who God is and who we are in Him. And for some reason, God keeps giving me little seeds of songs that I work on that seem to light my heart up over and over again. And so I'm just really doing the same thing I was doing when I was 15, which is just trying to write songs that people can sing together in a church environment, and also songs that would expose people to the Jesus that I know, and maybe it's a fresh Jesus from ones that people have seen through the lens of a church that hurt them, or maybe they really haven't thought of God at all. But I hope that my songs would light people's heart up for the Jesus that I have come to know through the scriptures and through life.
What for you, like, what's your process? What goes into making a song? You know that song's going to end up inspiring people, whether it's in the front of a house, like you mentioned, with in another country, whether it's at a church here in America. What sort of steps do you go through to make sure the message is what God and what you would want it to be?
The more I've done it, the more I just kind of rely on, there's this thing a friend of mine says, who writes worship songs, but other songs too. And he has this phrase, he says, write for your phone first, which is very not a spiritual thought. But what that means is, write the songs that you go back to that voice memo over and over again. And you're on a run or you're in the car and you can't wait to listen to it again just because you're so excited about it, just because it lights your heart up. And I've found to trust that a lot, trust, like, if there's a feeling of like, I can't wait to sing this with my church, and getting my mind off, like, I think this is the formula that really hits in church, or I think this is the kind of thing radio would play, or I think, man, I've learned, and I used to say it, but when I'm in a song right and people are like, man, radio's gonna love this, that's like such a turn off to me now, because it feels like oh, you're trying to hit a target and not just trying to sing something that feels like it makes your heart just elevate into a place of heightened awareness of whatever the song's about spiritually, heightened sense of God's presence, heightened sense of thankfulness of what He's done, fresh little perspective, just even slightly fresh perspective on the cross and what it means for us. All those things is like, that's what I chase. Really what I'm chasing first is just that thing that makes me, all of a sudden I realize I've gotten to my feet and I've stopped playing guitar and I'm just like holding my guitar in the air, singing it in the writing room, And it's like, oh, like something in my spirit is agreeing with joy and fervor and passion. And that's step number one. And then it's like that you get down to like the nitty gritty of like, okay, how does this become a song that serves serves the church. It serves me well in my like goal of what the season is. And then you blast, you punch, you kick the snot out of the song and yourself trying to get it right, and rewriting, and then going over every lyric. It's like, okay, this moment, the reason why this song, why I've spent an extra 17 hours around this song since that moment it was born, is everything living up to that moment of the song. And like, okay, if I'm honest, this verse isn't as good. If I'm honest, this bridge needs to be rewritten. And so I just pound that song into submission until I don't think I can in my own skill can't make it any better. And then if I still don't think it's as good as it should be, then I've got a short list of friends and I'm like, hey, do you think this should be different? Like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Get that input, rewrite it. And then I send it to my brother and my dad, and some people at the labels and my pastor. I kind of get there. Hey, is there anything in here where you'd kind of raise an eyebrow? Anything in here you think feels like tired that you think I should push harder for? So I've learned there's wisdom in the counsel of many, when they're trusted. But really all of that extra effort at the end is, the reason why you just keep pushing and keep shoveling in the dirt and keep trying to find the gold. It's because you remember that first moment of just maybe your eyes welled up with tears when a line was said and the melody was sung, or you jump for joy, like that's amazing, And so it's those little moments of inspiration that I call the anchor of the song, and then you chase that anchor until you feel like you can't do any better.
I love that. Well, the album is I Believe. Phil, appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much, man. It's good to talk to you.
That was Christian singer Phil Wickham. Lots of great wisdom there. And we are going to take a break, one final break, and we'll be right back with more Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. That's all we have for today's Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. Thank you for watching, and listen, be sure to head over to the CBN News YouTube channel. You can watch the full interviews that you saw on today's episode, see what else our guests had to say. We'll see you all again next week.